Internet in the Philippines is notoriously bad. We consistently rank amongst the slowest and most expensive service providers in the world. And this problem only became even more prominent over the course of the pandemic that saw many people working and studying from within their own homes. Even when you're just looking to lounge around at home, streaming on Netflix and playing your favorite multiplayer video games will require a stable internet connection. It can get really frustrating when you're having to deal with such laggy internet when all you want to do is be productive or engage in your favorite forms of recreation. But you don't always have to be at the mercy of those evil internet service providers. There are certain things that you can do to improve the internet connection in your own home and get those download speeds that you really want. The first tip is relatively obvious, but always try your best to use an Ethernet cable instead of Wi-Fi. Granted, this is mostly only applicable to laptops and desktop computers, but connections via an Ethernet cable are always going to be faster and more reliable than those on Wi-Fi. I know that the cables are such a hassle to deal with, believe me, I hate cable management, but LAN connections are always a better option. I know that internet plans are already very expensive here in the Philippines, and most service providers in the Philippines typically offer up a free router during the installation process just for you to avail of their plans. But usually, in order to maximize margins and minimize costs, the routers that these service providers use aren't necessarily the best. In fact, it's likely that they're very cheaply made and of very poor quality. Yes, dagdag gastos na naman when you have to buy your own router, but sometimes it's really the best way for you to maximize what you're paying for your internet plan. Anyway, a router is a one-time purchase, and if you choose one right, then it will last you for as long as 5 years or even more. When I switched my ISP's stock router with one that I bought myself, I went from just getting a 60 Mbps speed on my internet connection to a full 100 Mbps that I was promised by my service provider. It can get really intimidating when you're in the market for a new router. You'll be bombarded with so many terms and jargon that you might not be familiar with, but don't worry, I'll tell you everything that you as a consumer need to know when you're trying to find a new router. First, go for a router that supports Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 is the latest standard of Wi-Fi technology, and it allows for speeds of up to 10 Gbps. I know that the internet speeds here in the Philippines aren't reaching those levels, but it's always good to invest in a router that's future-proof. If you get a Wi-Fi 6 ready router now, then you won't have to upgrade your router anytime soon. Wi-Fi 6 routers are also relatively affordable now when you compare it to Wi-Fi 5 routers, so I think it's really worth spending just a little more to make your device more future-proof. This next feature might not matter if you live in a relatively small house or a condo unit, but if you're living in a larger space with multiple rooms, then you might want to invest in a mesh Wi-Fi system. As you may know, routers have very limited signal, and as you get farther away from the router, the weaker your internet signal is going to be. So in order to compensate for this in larger households, people used to buy Wi-Fi extenders in order to extend the signal of their router. These extenders would essentially function as their own routers with their own individual SSIDs and passwords. That means you would constantly have to connect to the nearest router to you depending on where you are in the household. And this can be such a hassle sometimes when you're in the middle of a call or when you're downloading a really big file and you need to jump from one place of the house to another. You'll end up getting disconnected as you shift from one router to the next. And that's why mesh Wi-Fi systems are such game changers. A mesh Wi-Fi system is made up of a main router and connecting devices called nodes, extenders, modules, or whatever the branding is going to be for that specific device. But for simplicity purposes, let's just call them extenders. These extenders are placed in different strategic locations around the house so that you are given a fully seamless Wi-Fi system. For a long time now, routers can be set up by use of mobile apps. And this is a lot more convenient for people who are just more comfortable with using their phones or their tablets. When you're shopping for a new router, as much as possible, you should choose a router with a good accompanying app that can provide you with lots of flexibility and control. Through the app, you should be able to reboot your router remotely. It should have QoS or quality of service, which will allow you to dedicate a certain amount of bandwidth to every device that's connected to the router. That means if you don't want anyone to interrupt your online class or your gaming because everyone is hogging the internet, then you can dedicate more of that bandwidth towards your personal device. device. And lastly, you have to take into consideration a router's aesthetics. Of course, if you will be displaying your routers all throughout the house, then you want it to be designed in a way that's nice and unobtrusive. Routers can come in many different shapes and sizes these days. Some have intense antennas sticking out of them, and while others have more boxier designs. Also keep in mind that this router will be in your home for many years, and so it's best to invest in one that you won't mind looking at. And for my recommended router, there are so many different options to choose from, but I urge you to consider the D-Link A1500 M15 mesh Wi-Fi system. Just as a disclaimer, D-Link did send me this unit for free as a review, but they have absolutely no control about what I'm going to say here in this review today. I think it's a very sulit router because you're essentially getting 3 different routers in one single package. They're Wi-Fi 6 ready routers, and that means that they're future-proof. They're also a mesh Wi-Fi system, and that allows me to transition from one room to another without having to reconnect to a new router. They also come with Ethernet ports if you ever want to extend your internet connection via an Ethernet or LAN cable. It also comes with a very easy to navigate and intuitive app that's so convenient to use. I will admit I did have a few problems with the installation process, but their customer service was so good. Their customer support representative walked me through the entire process, and now my Wi-Fi is up and running with no issues at all. And lastly, they have this really clean and cool minimalist design that's easy on the eyes. If you're interested in getting this router for yourself, please feel free to use the links in the description box at no additional cost to you. Yes, I know that the advice of buying yourself a new router can seem like such a cop-out, but you would be surprised at how effective this simple solution can really be to upping the internet in your home. So yeah, just about does it for this video. Thanks for sticking through all to the end. Please do tap that like button and show some support for this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so that you'll stay updated on any future uploads that I have. I will be coming out with more content about productivity and tech in the future, and so stay tuned for that. If there's anything you want me to talk about, or if anything you want me to review, please do drop those comments in the comment section down below. Alright, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys around again soon.